Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now loud and clear? Hello.
Yo. Testing. All good? Check on the Twitch. Keep speaking.
Keep speaking, keep talking,
Keep
talking,
speaking.
keep singing, keeping on, keeping on, keeping on,
One,
keeping
2,
on.
3, 4.
Here we go, here we go. We're live and direct. So we are now in session. I'm gonna give a clap for you guys filming, right? You want me to do? Here we go. This is how we roll. Dele Sosimi and Medlar in session.
Okay.
Hi everybody, my name is Dele Sosimi and this is Ned Pedlar, also known as Medlar. This is how we roll, this is what we do, and we're going to take you through how we come about getting our acts together. We're going to tell you what we use. I'm sitting on the Node. Normally I would have an extra keyboard, maybe a Prophet or maybe something else, maybe a Fender Rhodes, but yes, I would usually have a keyboard that can do a couple of things, like the Node Stage 3, and Nedla will talk you through what he has in front of him. Go on, Ned.
Hey everyone. So yeah, me and Dele have been playing together for 4 years, I think.
Yep.
And when we were asked to do a workshop, we thought a good idea would be the kind of intersection between both of our worlds. So a more electronic dance-based world that I'm accustomed to, and the live music world, which Dele has a lot of experience in. So as with anything, there's a million ways of doing this. We've kind of settled on this because it works for us, although we are always exploring new ideas and avenues of ways to perform. So since our first session in the studio, I just started recording a lot of MIDI of Dele playing. I'd prepare some drums, and then we'd kind of, when we performed, we'd break that up into elements. So say a bass line, a drum beat, which might be split into 2 or 3 parts, and usually a chord part, like say a 4-bar chord sequence, for example. And then the first performances we did, we had another 5 or 6 melodic elements, but in the venue we realized that was too much. We've kind of settled on the perfect thing for us is a bass line and maybe 1 chord part. And on the night, we often end up removing the chord part anyway. I'll go into a bit how we separate these parts that I'm talking about. So we write it on a computer, like most people do, and then I'll export files and then import them onto an MPC, which I have different parts routed to different outputs. So all the drums come through one channel, the bass for another, the melodic parts for another. So even though I can mute things on here, it gives me a quicker response. We do some looping as well. There's a couple of ways we do that. We use a kind of internal looper in the MPC, which loops MIDI, so you can quantize it. So that's really good for if you want to loop drums or bass. Specifically in a dance context, it helps to have very solid quantized kick and bass or drums. We also have this audio looper, which is a little Boss unit, which I have synced via MIDI, so it's playing the same BPM as everything, and Dele's keys will be going through that. Today it's a Nord, sometimes it will be another synth as well. So I guess, should we just get into our intro of our set and see how it works? Yes. Maybe I'll pick up some loops of Dele on the fly. This is more like a kind of open rehearsal than a performance, so I might stop it and explain what we're doing.
Yep.
Cool. Let's get into it. So this is our first record, Full Moon, which we pretty much start all of our shows with. It's kind of like a little way to warm up into the show.
Yep.
another thing I didn't mention, I have a drum machine. So depending on the setting of where we're playing, the size of the venue, the time at night, we can kind of adjust the energy levels. So often we'll play in quite small venues. I'll have quite minimal drums for that. But if we're playing in a club, I can add some drums, a kind of house beat or something. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly show the MIDI looper that we use sometimes. Often we'll kind of front load the show, so the beginning of the show will have some more visually interesting stuff going on. Because playing live, it's worth bearing in mind if people can see what's happening or not. So now I've captured that loop. If I want, I can remove it. So say often Dele will end up playing some new chords and will end up replacing the original loop. So now we have the audio of this loop. Sometimes the MIDI syncing is a little bit glitchy, so we try and keep it to a 4-bar loop or less. And of course now we can switch between these two. And the key really is to be flexible, so without being too bound to long loops and stuff on here, we can make it up as we're going along, which is the most important thing really. And to kind of demonstrate what I was talking about, the drums, we could kind of So there's loads of little tricks you can do to kind of add some immediate interest. It's fundamentally how a show works. So I have maybe a dozen or so different tracks on here. I'll arrange it in a way where I can flick to the next sequence, which will be the same BPM or a different BPM, and this drum machine will keep rolling, so it can end up as like a transition. We'll just have a little jam, and I'll show how we can build up a track.
Like that, and it comes whatever your imagination can do, because we love to improvise as we go along. Alright, it's a full moon tonight. Repeat after me. It's a full moon tonight. 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 It's a good time to party. dance, you can party. All night, you can dance, you can party. All night long, all night long, all night long. In its simplicity like that. And then we can take it.
I'll show how we might transition to another part. So our current set at the moment, we start with this track, and then I have lots of different parts that are in A minor, which is the same key as the original. So I could bring in a new bass line, for example, if I mute the original one. This is MIDI, so it'll take 4 bars to come in. And in theory, it should blend seamlessly with any loops we have going before, or any melodic parts. Obviously, there might be a couple of notes which don't work perfectly, but it will be in the same key, so it should work. And this is where, in a show, you end up getting into a cool mental state, because exciting things are happening, which might be a bit unpredictable. From my part, though, it's really important to make sure I don't have too much to occupy my mind, so I still can focus quite clearly on what I have to do. So that it's all preparation, really. So yeah, preparing all these loops in one key. Let's get into it, and if something else comes up, I'll stop and explain it.
slowly transitioning into a new set of chords again, depending on the mood. And most of the time, we've put so much hours into what we do, we tend to vibe off the audience most of the time. So watching the moods, feeling the energy, our experience would then come into play where we do things on the fly, especially because we've grown to trust our processes. And after so many hours of doing what you do, you probably will have an arsenal of skills that you probably will bring in on the fly, depending on the inspiration of the moment. So there's no limit as long as you know what tools you have at your disposal. So we could do almost anything in the thick of it, in the middle of it, depending on the vibe in front of us. So now, because we're doing this for your educational satisfaction, we'll just stick to talking through most of these transitions. So there we go.
Yes, a lot of Dele was saying, I think one of the big learning things for us was having too much material when you turn up, because you can get caught out sometimes. We've done shows that's like a 7 p.m. jazz show gig, and then the next week we're playing at 2 a.m. in the club. And obviously you can't really play the same set in both those places. Maybe you could, but you're making things a bit difficult for yourself. So having too many places to go, and things like this drum machine, you can really change the energy level of a track very quickly. So yeah, just to reiterate Dele's point, having that flexibility and preparation puts you in a much more comfortable space. And another point, it's very important to be in a good mental space to do a show that isn't entirely rehearsed, because you want to be feeling good and relaxed, basically.
That's just a line just came up to me, and I just said, let me have a go, let me have a go. How do you like that bass line? Just vibing up the bass line, I can come up with a few words to speak out to you, try and reach out to you, reach out, bring out the party in you. When you hear that bass line, you think, I gotta move my feet, I gotta shuffle, I gotta move, I can't keep still. Come on, it's a walkie bass line, and then goes like a hee-haw, hee-haw. there's no limit to what your imagine. You're only limited by what your imagination can come up with. So the more arsenal of musical motifs and musical riffs and musical knowledge you have, you can come into play. There's no limit to what you can do. So we even come up with some popular anthems of other artists that we could loop in, but it depends on the mood, and most of the time we just vibe off the energy we get in the house. But when we're working for studio purposes, it's the same thing. We try and imagine ourselves. I just take myself to a lovely place where I can imagine a crowd in front of me expecting to be rocked and shocked and awed musically. So that's a good way to look at things. And if we want to use the experience of live participation, we look for hooks, arsenal of hooks that we can use to get everybody to sing along. Because don't forget, one of the most important parts of what we do is getting people into what we're doing, getting them to vibe along, getting them to sing along, getting them to chant along, come up with something that, But basically, we have at our disposal all the equipment we use to create a very good party vibe. So that's one of the foundations that helps us to keep it going. Right, Ned?
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing I learned from Dele actually is developing tracks in a live performance setting. So Dele told me many stories of playing with Fela Kuti back in the day where after they released the record, they'd never play it live again, which I thought was really cool and very interesting. I hadn't really heard. Normally it's the other way around. The bands that I'd been used to and worked with. So the idea of developing something on a stage and perfecting it on a stage is pretty cool, I think. And this record actually was on our initial live set, so from 2019, but we only released it this year, right? Was it last year? The Silver record.
Yeah.
All about the dance. So
it's all about the dance.
And it really informed it, having performed it a few times in clubs and festivals and stuff. And it always comes out a bit different, but is a good example. This is a good example of something. The initial project had, like I was saying before, there was maybe 4 or 5 more melodic elements that we just removed because it's overkill. One thing with a live show, a live electronic show,
KISS. Keep it stupidly simple.
Keep it stupidly simple. People don't really know what you're doing as well. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors with a hardware or live set. So yeah, the less there is going on, I think it's more apparent what I'm doing if I'm focusing on just 3 or 4 boxes rather than trying to do everything and program everything live. So yeah, restraint basically is a good thing. So let's have a jam with this track, and if any other processes come up, I'll stop it and explain what's going on. this is a good example. Now there's absolutely nothing coming from the MPC. It's only from this drum machine and the loops from Dele's keyboard. So I'd probably do this for I don't know, 5-10 minutes, and then bring in. I've got all these other parts in the same key that aren't really from any specific track. Like this, for example, I wrote based around the previous track we played. I think just recorded it on a synth at home. And I think we're in E flat minor now, right? Is that right? And that's another thing worth considering. It's worth considering what are good keys to play in. And a lot of stuff seems to be in E flat minor, maybe because it's just a nice scale to play. So yeah, that's worth considering as well.
For example, it just came to my head with this loop. I might decide to go la 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 la. Yeah, everybody just sing along, sing along, sing along. Everybody, come on. La la la. It's a Fela Kuti lick, but you know, sometimes in the thick of it, well, people are not expecting it. There we go, shaking it to the left, shaking it to the right, vibing, vibing, vibing. Suddenly you hear somebody singing loud. La 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 la. Now, anthems that are party orientated, sometimes we just come into play from nowhere, from somewhere, you know. It may be just vibing off someone in the house who just screams. Let me hear you scream, and then someone just and then you go, he go better. Why you no go better? Tomorrow go better pass. Tomorrow must better pass. By force you must better pass. Tomorrow go better pass today. You know. So it's not just our instrumentation. We use our voices, you know, come up with lines. It could be a throwdown of hip-hop lyrics, you know, or anything. But your imagination is your tool, just as your instrumentation and the equipment you have. So it's not in isolation. Everything works together with your imagination, and you must be able to be free to be open to it. For example, in the heart, blood runs through arteries. The body can't function if the veins ain't open to it. Cause I'm open to it. Are you open to it? Cause I'm open to it. Are you open to it? I said, in the heart, blood runs through arteries. Body can't cope if the veins ain't open to it. I'm open to it. Are you open to it? I'm open to it. Are you open to it? Oh, we're open to it then. So let's party. Come on.
So this loop now is something that started out as just a loop on the MPC, similar to the last one I described, and we're actually in the process of turning it into a track now. So another good example of getting a feel for what works, you know. So this is just one chord looped around, but always seem to get a good reaction on our live shows. And I guess it's a perfect thing to vibe over because you could go anywhere with it, really. You know? worth considering. I only ever really seem to have maximum of 4 of these samples playing concurrently at the same time. If I unmuted everything, it would be a mess. Everything would be clipping. So it's again just, I think getting into that preparation of just having far too much and then thinking, actually I can space these 13 pads probably over 20 minutes in a live show when combined with writing new beats. I could loop some MIDI, I could do various loops of Dele on here. So it's very simple, but almost the simpler it is, the more places you can go in some ways, I think.
A lot of elements that can also come into play with using the processors that you can use to process audio or process loops, give it that reverb, dubby effects that could come into play. Ned will give us a sample of notice that the BPM has come into play with most of the effects with a master click kind of automation synced up via MIDI. So whatever we do will be more or less quantized, not out of a loop or, and then if we want to double or we could adjust that manually, but there's no limit to your imagination like I earlier said.
A friend of mine who does a live show actually advised one good thing is having one delay which is unsynced. Partly, I think we both love the dub sound as well, slightly psychedelic. And that's another great way of getting a minimal sound with some interest, I can play around with this delay. There's only maybe 3 or 4 elements going on here, but on a big system, it sounds great, especially in the context of a set that's more complex in other moments. Really stripping it down is more often than not the biggest reaction we get towards the end of a set. You strip it down, similar to this, and yeah, it just works.
We're gonna sync up into something quite more.
I'll lean over to Dele and say, hey, yeah, let's grab that. Or Dele will lean over and say, what about this? Always try and stand pretty close to each other so we can also, if you want to end a track suddenly. And really it is normally enough. Just one kind of chord part like that. The Rhodes is perfect as well because it's so mid-rangey. A lot of the time when I'm preparing these backings, I'll leave a lot of space in the mid-range for either a chord part on here or for something we'll come up with on the fly. And a Rhodes or Wurlitzer sound is perfect. It's almost like a sine wave. There's not a lot of harmonics. It fits perfectly in the mix, and there's a lot of room for Dele to solo over the top as well, on like a synth or a clav sound.
We can come up, you see, that's just an example of all the things we can come up with in between as a demo and as a sample for you to then try and work out your own. Remember, you need to be able to trust your own sources, trust your equipment, trust and know what they are capable of. And the more hours you put into it, the better you get. Simple. You got to keep at it, experiment, fool around, and you discover things that you never thought were possible. So there's no limit. Where we are at is probably a lot of fun for us because we try to keep the fun in it. We don't want it to get boring. We don't want it to get like a task. The idea is we must have as much fun as you are having. So there's no limit to what we can do. Let's say we're coming to the end of our session now, and we want to end on a high because we've been quite mid-tempo lately. I will try and phase this into a higher tempo song systematically. Let's. Ooh. What can we do into? What can we can take it on a higher tempo? One of those garage Jones.
Okay, yeah, why not?
Yeah. This is one what we adapted into a garage one. Oh, should we do shape? Shape of your head. Yeah. This is one of our favorite. We love ending with this. So that. Yeah, well, we played it in Sheffield. Yeah. And then we did at the WSA record store day, just a snippet of it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, shout out Roman from La Rumba.
Yes, shout out to Roman from La Rumba.
Okay, so yeah, I hope this has been interesting or something.
Yeah, and
We're
educational. So one more time, going through what we are using, I'm using the Nord, and I use a lot of the patches I use is either the Wurlitzer or the Fender Rhodes, and then I take a couple of synth lead patches and then maybe a clavinet or two, and then the acoustic piano every once in a while. So that's the sounds coming from here. And Medlar is using a couple of, he's using the Boss looper.
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is interchangeable, really. I only know how to use these specific things. There's lots of other alternatives I kind of browse at on the internet late at night. Like this drum machine I picked up recently. Any drum machine is great, to be honest. Like Dele was saying, we do change things. So sometimes I'll bring a small synth that will be synced, and I'll play a kind of polyrhythm melody loop over the top, which again works for transitions and some original ideas. But really it evolves. We use this analog mixer. We're actually working on a set using CDJs and the hot cue loops. So at the moment I get a kind of a combination of 4 elements. So say bass, drums, no melody, drums, bass, just the melody, by switching channels here. I'm making tracks to play on a CDJ, so with the hot loops, you just switch to different 8 or 16 bar loops, partly to save on travel costs and making it easier to travel. We're playing in Istanbul in a few weeks, and that was the reason to kind of do this new setup. So it is kind of forged by necessity in a lot of ways. The easiest way to do this would probably be with a laptop and like a push controller, which are great for looping and stuff, to be honest. I just don't have a laptop that I trust to use in a club, and I do like something about going for an analog mixer rather than a controller, which is kind of the reason we do this now. But going forward, I'm going to try and limit the channels, and so I can use a 4-channel Pioneer DJM, because the effects very nicely synced and stuff as well, and mainly just to make the sound as good as it could possibly be in a bigger arena or bigger club.
And make it easier for us to do things on the fly.
Make it easy for yourself. Keep it stupidly simple, as Dele likes to say a lot.
And you never know how you're inspired, because once you're inspired during a performance, you want to do certain things. You've created an environment for yourself and the equipment whereby if you think of something on the fly, you can do it immediately there and there. There are times, moments in performance, we just look at each other and we certainly know the thoughts that cross down there. We look at her and we say, yeah, I feel you there. And then we implement, because we have, like I said earlier, mastered what we have in front of us. It's not the ultimate. It's not required for you to have the same setup, but the mindset behind such kind of ventures should be one where you know what you have and you know the strengths and walk to the strengths of what you have. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, if we come here next year, because we're planning to do this again next year, by the time we come back next year, we would have we'll be coming up with a new setup, and we'll be showing you what we've upgraded, what we've done again, what we've increased, or what we've taken out, or what we've added on, and it will probably be another stimulating session for you all. So let's end on this.
Very well said. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rye Wax, for
thank you. Thank you very much, Ableton, for the donations, and everybody else that donated to this. Massively appreciated.